So, hello everyone, Modern here. Yes, they have a massive day at Demon Slayer, Titan and so on. Now I'm talking about a new anime that also did yesterday that is based on a Pachinko simulator, and it's a very, very famous game, right? So the question is, can this anime be any worthwhile watching? And again, first here, I'm gonna give you the brief history, and the incredible importance of this Pachinko simulator, and why it's an amazing game, truly. And I also probably say how the anime is not terrible, but the anime for not at all can live up to the game's importance and hype, or even the feel of the. And I'll explain why that. But I think it's very important here to first talk about the game itself, right, before we talk about the anime. And of course, this is not based on a mobile game; it's an actual video game, right? And one of the most famous video games ever. But also, it's not my Crunchyroll originals, so it's gonna be crap, right? God damn it. One thing I have to say before talking about the game here is that I never understand why Crush Originals, not only are they all terrible, but also why are they always on Sundays, right? I don't understand why they're on Sundays in the middle of season. They start in like episode 6 or 7, right, of the older animes, and do this like half-ass thing over. Like, why comes it all? Why? It's just gonna make people harder to follow the anime. It's gonna be harder to do weeklies and so on. Yeah, so it's gonna get less virality, right? It's gonna get less YouTube views, less people talk about it. And so on. I don't know why I do it. But anyway, I am, of course, talking about Shenmue. So Shenmue, it's an amazing, classic Dreamcast game, right? This is old school, baby, okay? Real old school. We're talking Dreamcast. I'm talking freaking Dreamcast. And I, of course, as a typical nerd, of course I have a Dreamcast. Now I'm too tired to unpack it. But here is a blue box that I have. When I moved to this place, I packed down my Dreamcast, right? And you can see that it's, I picked a blue box because it's, Dreamcast, right? So you can see the games, the blue boxes, Castlevania, Grandia, and so on, right? In this side of here I have both, of course, Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2, but I'm just too lazy to unpack it. But whatever. So Dreamcast is this bankruptcy for Sega, okay? It's bankruptcy. And this game is the game that bankrupted them, right? So Shenmue is a very legendary game for being like the most expensive game ever in history of anime. Oh, sorry, not gaming. And now the anime is based on that. And it also basically bankrupted the whole company, right? So it's a very, very like famous video game. Regardless if it's a good or bad game, right? Yeah, it was the most expensive game ever made. And again, the company basically got bankrupt, right? So yeah, that you can, disregard if the game is good or not. Like that is a huge thing, right? So that's why I had to give it a brief here. And then of course Shenmue had this Kickstarter or a campaign kind of stuff, and then got Shenmue 3 released like 20 years after, right? So it's quite a notorious game, right? But anyway, let's just further the brief history here. So Dreamcast, of course, then is Sega's last console, right? Of course, Sega Genesis, right, and so on. Sega Mega Drive, blah blah blah. Sega Saturn, and then the Dreamcast. And the Dreamcast, there are two major factors why they got bankrupt. Right? The Dreamcast didn't sell enough copies, and this game cost too much money. But this game. The whole point of Shenmue, of course, was to bring people, right, to buy the Dreamcast. And when I was a kid then, I was around 10 or 11 or so, I guess, when this game was released, something like that, young teenager. And it really was like, if you have a Dreamcast and you don't buy this game, you're some kind of deranged sociopath. Like everyone that I know that bought a Dreamcast also bought this game. This truly was this like masterpiece, the ultimate video game that existed right at the time. And everyone was like, well, and the game of course sold out immediately, right? The copies were out. You had to like pre-order the copies like half a year before, and really had to pre-order copies because this game sold out like, it truly sold out, right? The problem, of course, is that yes, while everyone had a dream about the game, it didn't like bring enough people to buy a Dreamcast, right? But everyone that had a Dreamcast did buy the game. More or less, like incredibly high percentage of the actual owners, certainly. But it's not like new people are gonna buy a whole console for one game, right? Someone certainly, like a real collector, so on. But so that's kind of the economic issue, right? And then the game just costed incredibly amount of money to make, right? For its current like valuation and and so on, right? Given the inflation and stuff, right? It was incredibly expensive, right? So. That's kind of the economic backstory. But, talk about the actual game and why the game was so important. And, I say immediately, the anime doesn't work, okay? I don't hate the anime, it's like okay. But, the game it's so important because what it did, right, is to bring in so many game mechanics that we didn't have before that, right? So all these game mechanics are kind of thrown into, again, this game, and it was really amazing, of course, playing it. That game was so massive and so interesting, and especially the second game, right? So outside of Japan, they had made 2 game copies, so they got more money, I guess, then, right? But also they were so big, so they had to make another one, and and so on. And second game is even better. Shenmue, the second part, is much better. The first part is good too. But second part, oh my god, do you see that it is the prequel, split prequel for like Yakuza? It brings in all this stuff, right? So for example, if you ever played the Yakuza games, you have Ichiban, you know, the gold was platinum piece, yeah, steelbook of Yakuza like a Dragon Style, right? These games, of course, are big sellers for Sega, you know, in the later years, right? It's of course all inspired and heavily based on Shenmue, right? Yakuza game franchise. So at least Sega, you know, kind of used the ideas and so on later, right? But it truly did introduce so many game mechanics that we didn't see before, and that again why the game was so special, right? But even before I explain those game mechanics, just very briefly, how does an anime, you know, the anime of course doesn't translate that. The anime is just the storyline, right? It doesn't translate all this, you know, interesting new fighting mechanics and this thing and this thing. Yeah, of course it doesn't. It's just an anime. It doesn't translate anything of what made the game unique, right? So it's a complete miss, right, on the Shenmue feeling. It's just storyline. I watched it yesterday and I was, you know, entertained decently, right? Just straight up the same storyline, and it looked not super ugly like some other cultural projects. So I was like, okay, it's watchable, but it's just a storyline, right? It misses out on all thing that makes it a video game, right? So it actually feels very lackluster, honestly. But I want to explain a few, like, basically reasons, right, why it's so special and why it was so important when it actually arrived, right, as a video game. And the biggest thing that I think it brought, generally speaking, to so many other games is quick time events, right? It's the goddamn quick time events. So what it actually did is that it brought in this, like, Q2E, quick time. I see the sun is going down. I'm sorry. There we go. Damn it, sorry, yeah, there we go. The sun went down. Started doing a video. Goddamn sun goes down, and I'm too lazy to edit the shit. So we're gonna have it in here. Screw you people. No, but it's like, it's gonna be like this. Bam, right? Yeah, fixing that stuff. But anyway, so it introduced quick time events, and that was a big thing because you can see here, for example, right? So you have press the A button, right? To attack you in the blue, let it blah, and you die if you don't do it quick run. So yeah, this game was the first game to introduce this kind of like, oh here, press the button, right? And so on. And it was, you know, all quick, and you actually was pretty hard. I think a lot of games afterward definitely was way easier, I think, generally speaking, than in this game, right? Sorry about the sun here, right? But another lamp too. Okay, bam. And this is like all ad hoc solutions, yeah. Okay, whatever. So the sun suddenly went down. God damn it! But now we have lights instead. So that's a huge thing, right? That this is the first game. I said again, the first game that had cutscenes that you had to control the character, right? And that we see in like Bayonetta or whatever, right? We see it in so many games. Obviously Uncharted, right? So yeah, they're all about them as well. So this game again created that kind of, you know, movie canon, right? And of course, the actual video game is very movie-like, right? You have this typical martial art backstory. This badass kills your father, right? Your father's a dojo master. He taught you karate, and this kung fu guy kills your father. Now you want revenge, right? You're gonna travel to China to get revenge, right? And then so on, right? So it's a very typical, again, right, martial art flick, right? But you are playing this martial art movie flick, right? With all these quick time events and all this beat 'em up stuff and so on. And that's why the game was so special from just that alone. Where an anime, of course, okay, I mean, it looks fine, but you know, an anime, yeah, it's a kick coming here and it looks fine, right? But of course, it lacks that feeling, right? Now this is just cutscene when your father dies in the game too. But of course, later on in the video game, spoilers, you're gonna fight this guy and so on, right? And of course, then it's gonna be kicking you. Avoid it, you know, avoid the quick events, blah blah. And then after you beat the event, right? Then you get a beat 'em up game, right? Or a fighting game. So it felt like that, right? And of course, that is all missing, right? In this anime. So the anime has almost no purpose, honestly. I really feel so. All the stuff it did too is, of course, mini games. But first of all, put on the down below. The bad guy, he also exactly like Lauman from Virtua Fighter, and of course, it's the same people at Sega, right? The most that did Virtua Fighter, OMV2, they also did Shenmue, and that's why the game mechanics, basically fighting in the game, right, is basically Virtua Fighter, right? You have the game mechanics and so on, and a huge part then of actually playing Shenmue, right, is that you can learn martial art from a bunch of people. So for example, you can go to the old man in the park and he's like doing some Tai Chi stuff. And you're like, oh, that guy is doing cool Tai Chi. You can talk to him, become his friend. Then he teaches you a new, Kung Fu Tai Chi attack, right? And so on. And you can find like this scroll that teaches you martial art moves. You can buy them. You can go to the park in the second game and learn moves and so on. And you go to dodge and so on. So there's a lot of that stuff, right? It's so important in Shenmue that you have to like go around in the game world to learn martial art and improve fight styles and all that. And of course, all of that is completely missing, right? Again, in the anime. Certainly, the anime is gonna have scenes with the character goes to like learn some stuff, right? But I mean, the whole idea of that discovery fun factor, trying to understand how can I learn all the martial art stuff, how can I do this and so on, is of course missing, right? And just like I mentioned earlier, for example, the Yakuza, right, famous for its karaoke, it's all these other mini games and the running and yada yada, right? That is again, of course, something that Shenmue as a video game introduced, right? Certainly, you had video games before, like Final Fantasy and other, mostly JRPGs, right, where you had other mini games. Suikoden, you had the trading and the dice game and the chef game. For Fantasy, of course, you have the Blitzball, right? You have the card game, you have the Chocobo Racing, and so on, right? So certainly, it's nothing new, especially from Japanese companies, to have like mini games that are other games. But in Shenmue, you could actually straight up play old Sega games. You could go to the arcade, right, in Shenmue, and then in the arcade, you could play these older games that they did, right, like 20 years before Shenmue. It has stuff like that, right, where you could like go in there and play the game, and you get some stuff and so on, right. So it truly is that, of course, this game was released before you had achievement and so on, right, trophies, right, in the video games. But certainly, this is the perfect game to be like, oh, have you beaten all the mini games? Have you got you could open this collector stuff, you get the Sonic figure and Knuckle and so on, right? You open this like vending machines to get collectible and so on. It's like the perfect like collectible achievement driven game, right? It really is. So honestly, Shenmue was a fantastic game when it was released. They had so much of this extra mini game and content, and it was just so much stuff you could do outside of the actual game scope, right? So many quests, right? And so many different stuff, and of course the Pachinko truly was a huge part of it. You played Pachinko to make money and so on. You could have martial art tournaments to make money. You could work at the trucker, you drive around the truck and so on to make money and to pay for rent in the second game and so on. So much of that, right? Like live a life and one day get revenge for your father. That's the game, right? And truly the game was way ahead of its time. Again, the game would have made so much more sense being released today, right? Instead of have achievements, get all those Sonic figures, right? Beat all the mini games, beat all the classic mini games, get this time part on the tracker thing, right? Carry these logs in number of time, right? Find all the butterflies basically in the forest. The game was so much of that stuff, right? I mean, today find so commonly, right? In the Spider-Man, the Horizon, right? Sekiro, whatever. Yeah, all these games that have so much collectible, find it stuff, pick up that stuff, open the monkey box or whatever, right? The game truly kind of established so much of the game mechanics that when you play the game, it really felt like, oh my god, this game it's like 10 games in one, right? And it was truly an amazing experience when the game was released. So that's basically the brief history of Shenmue. I'll say one thing though, Shenmue 2 is much better. It has way better minigames. It introduces more stuff, right? Supposed to be the second part really of the original game. But Japan had to buy 2 games, right? And it also introduces, more interesting characters. You get a freaking waifu. You get a freaking bikini dress biker waifu. Come on. Joy is her name too. I believe her name is Joy too. She running around in like a gyro bikini. She basically is like half naked and runs around a bike, with her oppies, and you're like, yeah, the second part of the game. It was way more interesting. The second part had, yeah. For some reason, it was way better. But honestly though, you have 3 cities in Shenmue 1 and 2. The first city is in Japan, right, when the game and the anime starts. But in the second game, you get to China, and the 2 Chinese cities are way bigger, way more interesting. So Shenmue 1 was amazing when it arrived, right? I had to wait for like a year or so till the second game was translated and so on, right? The second version, second part of it. But the second part takes all the game mechanics from the first part, right, and really expands them. And you really felt that. Like today when I play Yakuza game, I'm like, man, that game is very similar to the first city in China and so on. You really feel the similarities to this day, right? So at least Sega managed to make money in its spiritual sense, right? But anyway, the anime then, right? It's supposed to be an anime review, even though I kind of reviewed now Shenmue. But honestly, Shenmue was like a 11 out of 10 game, right, when it was released 20 years ago. And today it wouldn't be the best game ever. But I mean, again, it is basically Yakuza, right? It's basically the Yakuza game today. But as an anime, it is pretty boring. It is pretty like, meh, it's okay. It's not the worst anime ever, right? It has story and so on. But the thing with it as an anime is that first and foremost, and this is, again, I really like this game, right? It's an amazing game and so on, and it's not just nostalgia. I mean, I really mean it, right? From a objective standpoint, the game truly introduced so many new mechanics, so many new ideas, right? And generally speaking, Sega was very good at having new ideas. Jet set, doing online graffiti and so on, right? Taxi and so on, shoot a rocket. They had so many crazy ideas. That's why they didn't make any money, because they were too crazy, right? They have way too many. Basically, what they did, especially with Shenmue, was we have a huge amount of ideas, right? And they're all good ideas, but the cost of producing this game is too high, right? Like they're producing all these crazy shenanigans, and they're not selling enough, right? It was too out there, right? And also too expensive to go out there. So not only Shenmue, but they also made a bunch of other crazy interesting games that didn't sell enough copies compared to the cost of producing them and so on. So the Dreamcast, in one way, is the most interesting game console ever made, because they don't have that many other developers except Sega and obviously the big developers, and they had all these crazy ideas, right? The craziest console ever, truly. But anyway, when it comes to an anime, then, right, it is actually pretty bad, because the weakness of Shenmue, even though I say it's a 11 out of 10 game, right, with all this mechanics and so on, the storyline is the weakest part. The storyline in Shenmue is just the weakest thing. The storyline I mentioned earlier, right, it's just like, okay, this guy is a martial artist son, right, he goes up in the dojo, his papa is a dojo master kind of guy, grandmaster, martial artist, karate and so on. And then a random bad guy from Virtua Fighter appears and kills his father, right? Beats him up easily. Defeats them both. It's like an episode of anime, right? Defeats them both easily. And a big part then of the development of the main character, he was very kind of smug and braggy before. Oh, I'm the best fighter ever, right? And then this Chinese guy so easily defeats him. He's like, oh my god, now I see what my father said. Yeah, I lacked, the humbleness. I lacked there's always so much stronger out there. I need to improve my martial art, right? So then becomes a journey to, find his father's killer, right? And also, of course, improve his martial art techniques and, mastering the discipline of martial art, right? Like, he was an incredibly good fighter, but he lacked the humbleness and he lacked, the true martial art skill, right? So that's also why you're learning martial art, right, from old men in the park and so on, right? Because it's part of his, like, little redemption of his lack of, arrogance. Or, I mean, not lack, but too much arrogance, lack of humbleness, so on, right? And that's kind of the journey. So the actual storyline is not bad, but it's the most straightforward martial art storyline ever, right? Yeah, it's like, someone killed my dad, now I'm here to get revenge, I gotta train martial art, and during that I'm gonna find, friends, and I'm gonna have some enemies, and I'm gonna, defeat the enemies, I'm gonna learn new martial arts, I'm gonna meet a new guy from this country, from whatever, Korea, he's gonna teach me this taekwondo. Then I meet this woman, from Hong Kong. She will teach me this martial art. I help her with her cast. It's that kind of game, right? Typical, again, martial artist storyline with the character. Travels around, right, different countries and different cities and learn the techniques and also have to work and, become like grown up and so on. It's like a coming of age storyline. Again, the storyline isn't terrible in Shenmue, but it's just a storyline, right? It's the most basic martial art Hong Kong kind of kung fu kind of story ever. Right? You can see all these like Hanku Kung Fu flicks that we have in the 70s, right? And did that make the game bad? No, it didn't, because the game again had so much, of all these elements, right? The game had so much of this thing and this thing and that thing so on. So that the storyline was very simplistic and very, again, traditional martial arts, right? It's very important to understand that the character, main character, Ryo, his personality and the general premise is very martial art, right? The bad guy doesn't kill him, And that actually makes sense. I mean, in a lot of storylines, you're like, why didn't the bad guys kill the good guy for? You know, why did he let the good guy be alive? That's kind of silly. He could just kill him and then, you know, he would have won, right? You know what I mean? But the good guys are very, also the bad guy, I mean, it's a very honorable, you know, martial art. He's like, I promised your father to not kill you if he told me where the mirror was. So I'm not gonna kill you, right? Because that's a promise I made as a proper martial artist. And also, of course, that's why I actually like in storyline. Because as in episode 1, when his fitted is, you know, he get the mirror and so on, he's like, I will kill you, right? You know, you killed this person, you killed, you know, he wants revenge too, right? It's a circle of revenge, right? He's like, I want to fight you, right? And he's like, but I want to just kill you. I'm gonna fight you, right? He says, stand up again, let's go again, right? And that might sound silly, but again, the movie, or say the anime, but the game, right, is supposed to emulate this classic, right, like Bruce Lee movies and so on, right? You know, this classic, like Enter the Dragon and so on. It's supposed to emulate this, you know, traditional, you know, kung fu action, this like Hong Kong flick kind of dramas, right? Where of course, even the bad guy is, you know, an honorable bad guy. He's like, no, I'm gonna kill you, but you're gonna kill me in a battle of death because you have, you know, you're a grandmaster in karate, right? I'm a grandmaster in kung fu. Even if I'm clearly better than you, I have to give you a chance to stand up and fight me as a proper, you know, master of martial art, right? So they have this like proper fight, right? Of course, he beats him easily, but the idea is that he's a bad guy, but he's a very honorable, lawful evil, right? He's like, I'm an honorable bad guy. I want to fight you in a proper way, right? And I will let you have a chance. And of course, he lets the main character be alive, right? The son, because he's like, I promised the father to not kill his son if he gave me the key, right? The mirrors. He's like, I'm not gonna hurt him, right? Because that's part of the honorable promise that I made, even if I'm clearly the bad guy, right, so to speak. So all that storyline elements works. There's not like plot hole, I feel. There's not like illogical plot, right? Because yeah, they are supposed to be very, very right traditional, culture-wise, East Asian martial art feeling, right? So it all makes sense, right? But again, it is the very, very, of course, simplistic, you know, yeah, typical like old school Chinese like a Bruce Lee movie, right? That is the game, right? That is the game storyline. And when you play the game, it's helpful that the main character is also a very honorable good guy, right? He's also like, oh, I'm gonna save this girl in the park, but we're gonna fight you two in a proper fight, right? I'm not gonna kick him in the ass. I'm gonna be like, okay, you stand over there, I will save this girl, and they're like, okay, let's fight, right? Yeah, it's very like it's proper, right? And then you have the bad guys trying to hit him in the back or whatever, right? And that's a quick time events, right? You know. So the whole video game and the storyline is always mixing this like, you know, honorable martial art, dishonorable martial art, right? Like the bad guy that appears in episode 1, right? He's a you know, the Mantis guy. He's fighting with what's it called? Tiokan Kung Fu, whatever the thing is called. You see it in Virtua Fighter, right? So for example, a lot of the characters in the game is based on Virtua Fighter characters. So his fighting style is the same one that Leon used to see Virtua Fighter, right? I think his name is, yeah, Kyokan. Yeah, Leon has the Kyokan fight style. I believe. I think he's like a young guy that fights with the praying mantis fighting style. Right? So you can basically find almost every character in Shenmue. It also Virtua Fighter. Like the main character, the main bag is Lao, right? Yeah, and so on, and the fighting styles and so on, because they all use the same code and the same, you know, animation for a lot of the characters, right? But anyway, so that's it's something, right? And it's all about this back and forth, right? Learning new martial art, helping people, you know, fighting the honorable and dishonorable people, right, and so on, and you know, the proper way. He's of course a very honorable good guy, most of it. So, but the storyline, that's the storyline, and it just as an anime, it doesn't really work, right? I mean, it works as in, do you want to watch the most cliché anime ever? You know, like again, the game didn't try to be unique, right, in the storyline. The game takes place in 1986. The game was released like what 15 years, 14 years after that. So already that on purposely, the game takes place, you know, in the past, right? When, you know, it's a little more traditional, more conservative Japan, so on, you know. On purpose, of course, yeah. It's a little bit like we're gonna be a little more conservative, you know, Japanese society, right? And so on. So clearly already there, the game knew that we are going like an old school Japanese setting, right? A little more, you know, to make it feel more like, again, like an old kung fu movie, right? Yeah, we're going back like 50, 20 years in the past here, right? And now that watching the anime today, 2022, this anime takes place like 40 years ago in Japan, right? And yeah, it's like, I will fight you to death in honorable, yeah. You know, it's very much like, okay, this is like, the storyline is written in like the 70s, right? The storyline is like, I will watch a kung fu movie from 75, right? That's basically how it feels. And I like this, I'm a martial artist, right? I have all my weapons, I like this stuff, Okay, yeah, like, boom, 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 yeah, let's do this, okay, do this, bam, okay, this, like, this kind of stuff right there, So I don't mind, right? But I'm just saying that is the storyline. And again, the storyline is by far the weakest thing. And I found the anime to almost be kind of pointless because it's like, oh, I'm watching like one of the greatest video games ever from a gaming kind of standpoint, which has one of the worst stories ever. Again, it doesn't translate, right? It doesn't translate. The anime isn't capturing anything, right? That the game has special, right? Because the least thing unique, of course I said that 10 times, but also the least unique thing with the game is the storyline. The storyline is purposely written as like a 70 kung fu movie, right? So that's the least important thing of the whole game. And that's also kind of interesting because the whole, as I mentioned, the whole Dreamcast, right, that has having this blue white box here, yeah. The whole Dreamcast collection I have here, right, are all a bunch of crazy game mechanics, right? Like Jet Set Radio, that game has, the storyline is pretty wacky, I guess, totally the military fighting people with graffiti and so on. But mostly, again, it's a game mechanics, right? Crazy Taxi, you're driving a taxi, great game, you're driving a taxi, it's an awful game first, yeah. You're driving a taxi, and it's just, crazy. It's like, Shushu Rocket, how do I explain Shushu Rocket? It's like, you're controlling these mouses. You put on boards. Okay, this is one of the weirdest games they ever made. It was free. You got it for free to the Dreamcast, and had to buy it. It was like free because it was delayed or something. So if you bought the game, they would later give you Shushu Rocket. I guess some kind of waifu, seriously. I get some goddamn waifu when I Google it. What? I hear this. So Shushu Rocket, it's like a video game you got for free, and it's a 4-player game, and it was actually really cool. So this is how it looks. Okay, bad image, I know. I Google something, but so basically you play 4 players. It's really fun actually. 4-player mode is really fun. Playing alone, of course, is horrible. But 4 players is really fun, and you have these mouses running out, right? You're supposed to like control them with putting arrows. So one button is up, so yeah. So you have the keyboard, right, 4 buttons, up, down, left, right. And you have to then control them to run into your home, your rocket, basically. That's the whole game. But it's like really, really crazy. It's incredibly fast-paced. You get this called Mania, and you spam shit and the whole screen explodes. And what makes it crazy is that you can then put these, arrows, right, or run left or right or whatever, pretty simple. But if you play 4 players, and I guess the AI does too, but basically for humans, I can, of course, put an arrow whatever I want, right, on your field too. So I have to redirect, your arrows. It is similar to something like, I don't know, Robo Rally or something, yes. But it's like 10 times worse because it's like hyper real time. Robo Rally is like, I guess, not really turn-based, but it's kind of turn-based. But it's kind of similar, yeah, it's like turn-based-ish, right? You have like a timer, right, for the Robo Rally, I guess. But Shushu Rocket is like Robo Rally on ecstasy. So it's super crazy. So anyway, this anime, of course, doesn't capture anything, right, of the craziness that was Sega, right? And for that matter, Shenmue 3, I'm not the biggest fan of, right? Because, yeah, it's released like 20 years later. It's mostly different storyline, that's good. But from a game mechanic, right, it's like, oh, it's like the same kind of game again. That's not that fun because, again, right, the Yakuza standpoint has done that and better now, right? And we have all these other video games that has done what Shenmue did and done it better, right? So for a storyline, interesting, and there's also a little difference in the anime. The anime, they showed more of the ending of Shenmue 2 when they're in a cave and so on. I thought that was kind of strange to start a little bit with that thing. You have to play the whole game to get to the village in the end of Shenmue with this girl, the mystery girl. It's very weird because when you play part 1, part 2 in Europe and so on, you can't even get to the Chinese village in the first part, right? So you're like, I have no idea. You have to beat the game to know why it's called Shenmue. You have to, and of course, part 1 you can't beat. You can beat part 1, but obviously it just ends when you go into China, right? But yeah, see, they never figured. I went 1 more year to get the truth right. But anyway, I think the anime it's like fine, right? It looks decent. It has, but the storyline is obviously it's just gonna be like watch the anime if you wanna watch the most stereotypical Chinese kung fu action Hong Kong flick movie that you want, if you wanna watch that, that's anime for you. But you shouldn't expect anything because truly the storyline is the worst part of the game, and of course the anime doesn't have anything right to do with all the collectibles and the weird mini games and the Pachinko and so on. Because when you play the game, for example, I knew what Pachinko was, right? before I played the game, right? But I never played Pachinko, and you have to play a lot of Pachinko seriously in that game because it's the best way to make money. So, like, you have to learn Pachinko, right? And they have different Pachinko places, the boards, in different cities. So it's just that thing, right? You have to learn Pachinko, how to play it correctly, and then you have to learn each board, right? And each city board, and then you can also get hired to run your own Pachinko shop. Yeah. So the game, that shit in the game, right? I remember it today so well. I was like, I remember when I beat this guy at Pachinko, right, a few times. And if you've done that, he hires you. So now I am the Pachinko master, and I'm running my own Pachinko shop, and I'm beating the crap out of this old drunk man coming to try my Pachinko money, You're like, that shit, right, is in the video game, right? That is never gonna be translated into an anime. But that was badass. You're like, I have my own Pachinko shop now. Standing here on the street with my Pachinko shit, Come on, you drunk torch. Let's play Pachinko, right? Yeah, it was that kind of shit, right, the game had. And of course, the anime is probably one episode where they play some Pachinko, right? Because it's like a homage, right? But it doesn't really capture, the feeling having to learn and so on. For example, in, Yakuza, the latest one, I haven't played the newest one. But the latest one there, you have to, for example, play shogi, right? No, I played shogi before. But for example, if you hadn't played shogi before, now you have to learn shogi, right? Because that's part of the game, It's part of the game that beat this guy that plays shogi, different cues and dan and so on, right? For example. And one thing I did in this game, actually, is that you have to make money. I'm not spoiling the game here, but in one quest in the game, you have to make a lot of money. So what I did, one thing I did was to play Mahjong. Right? I love Mahjong, play a lot of Mahjong competitively. And you can play Mahjong for money, of course, in Yakuza, right? Of course, because typical Yakuza team, right? So I went to the hardcore Mahjong place, like hard mode Mahjong, and beat the crap out of the ice in Mahjong, right? To make money. Like, that shit is fun, And obviously, I imagine that if you never played Mahjong before, you have to learn, right? To be able to play a Yakuza game, you know what I mean? That shit that the game gives you that a movie or an anime never can give you, right? No, it feels like this video now is about how video games is superior to anime. but it feels like just because Shenmue is so focused on its extremely diverse mechanics, right? That was also all new, basically. Not all of them, but most of them were very, very fresh and new and unique, right? Again, the anime, of course, is a massive failure, right? It completely misses the mark, right? On giving you anything that made Shenmue unique, right? But anyway, guys, that's a Shenmue review, I guess. Most of the video game, right? History. Hope you guys liked it. I don't know, honestly, I feel like no one's care about the video. Because that's kind of what I meant earlier too, right? I don't understand why Crunchyroll, again, right, why they like, we're releasing this anime, but we're doing it in the middle of season. It's like with Fina. Almost no one saw Fina. Right? It was a horrible ending, so don't see it. It's the worst ending in my life. Don't see it. But I just mean like, I picked up Fina, right? And I was like, the beginning is good and then it's terrible ending, right? But I picked up. And almost no one else did it, right? Because, it's the middle of season. People already have their schedules and so on, right? People that do reviews and reactions and so on can already have their, setting and so on, right? So they miss out on all that variety, right? And so on. And they also released it, Fina was like very off timing to me. Yeah, it was like very weird timing on Sundays. No other anime is releasing that time. Like completely, releasing it on Sundays in the weirdest time frame. In the benefit though, it's better to release it at that time frame, I suppose, than releasing it at the same time as Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer, I suppose. But still, it's like, this is not the timer, to go up and watch anime and so on. That also makes it people tweet about it less, right? View it less, all the stuff, right? Reddit, whatever, Twitter and so on, all the stuff is going to be less. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Basically, every anime they make is crap, right? They're always terrible. And this kind of PR stuff also feels like, why can't they just release it at a normal time frame, right? People are like prepared to do anime stuff and so on. If you're going to do a seasonal anime, right? It's just so strange. But it's a side note, but I don't understand why they keep doing this stuff. Because it clearly doesn't work for them. Like almost no one, right, talked about Fina. And that was good, I guess, because the ending is so terrible. But this is gonna show the truth. I made a long video about how much I hated the ending of Fina, right? And they didn't get that much views. I mean, I'm not saying it was the best video ever. I'm just saying that it was incredibly controversial and terrible ending, right? Yet, basically, no one cared about it because no one saw it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was like dropping if a tree falls in the forest. No one, it had that feeling, right? Because the ending was so incredibly terrible because no one saw the ending, no one noticed it, right? So I was like, this ending is way worse than Promised Neverland. They're very similar endings. Promised Neverland is a terrible ending, right? But Fina is way worse. It is worse. And yet, of course, Promised Neverland has a manga, so it has a lot more, people hating it, right? But Fina, almost everyone hated it. The ending, of course, almost everyone hated it, but there was like a few people hated it. So anyway, I'm just pointing out the Crunchyroll. I don't know what they're doing, I'm just like, what's wrong with them? Anyway, tomorrow I think we're gonna do the Crunchyroll roast, right, of the Anime Awards, yeah. So on the topic there. So except for that, I believe it's out tomorrow, maybe tonight. I don't know exactly when it's out, but they're gonna do that. It doesn't matter so much. Last month, of course, we did the extra roasting, right, of the judges nomination one. Tomorrow, I believe, maybe on Wednesday, but sometime this week, they're gonna show the result, right? Who won and who lost one. Of course, it doesn't matter that much. It's a popularity contest. It doesn't matter that much. People are gonna vote still for the popular animes. It has less value, certainly. I do hope that Aaron wins both, though. It'd be hilarious if he wins both because it's so stupid and so on. So there's something to laugh at, right? So I'm gonna do it tomorrow. I think it's out tomorrow. When it's out, when it's out. But yeah, it's just the actual nomination is more roasted, right? The next video about Crunchyroll is more like, let's see what they voted for. But the judge has so much power, so who knows what. Anyway, she doesn't have a great day.